All right, Marfoogle TV live in 3, 2. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam A.K. Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. We've got a lot to go over in a short amount of time, so let's get right into it. Trump and top aides refuse to rule out war with Venezuela. Now, watching the patterns of how they cover different wars and different proxy wars that we've been in the past, normally they say they refuse to rule out doing this because they're going to. The same way that China refuses to rule out war to take over Taiwan. There's actually been a lot of examples for exactly this kind of thing happening in the last 2 years. President Nicolas Maduro orders Venezuelan Navy to escort the oil tankers, which we covered yesterday or the day before. So now you've got a run-in where you've got a huge chunk of our Navy down there, aviation units. You've got 15,000 soldiers. You've now got rescue aircraft, Hercules, all sorts of things down there, and submarines. All of this is going down with earmarked funds to keep it going until 2028. They, of course, have chunked up the actual airspace above Venezuela, so only a few actual planes or companies even want to go into it. So now it is getting serious. You're talking about an embargo on the sanctioned oil ships, and you, of course, have them essentially stopping most of the flights in and out. Donald Trump and his top advisor have refused to rule out the potential for open conflict with Venezuela as Nicolas Maduro urges Navy to escort oil tankers. In an interview broadcast on Friday morning, our president told NBC News that going to war with Maduro's regime remains on the table. I don't rule it out, no. And remember, because of how it's set up, and Maduro is now the leader of a narco-terrorist state, then we can go to war without Congress involved. This is for our national security. At least that's how it's kind of playing out. Most people do not believe that. I see some people saying like, oh, well, of course he's doing this because he can't do it under this. I'm not saying that all the people hate him for doing this. They just don't believe it. The president of any country or the prime minister or whatever, they have to lie to get certain things done. And in this case, I think he's actually doing something on a defensive move by doing this whole Venezuela thing. I'll explain more of that later, but again, we're going to be right back with a ton more. Just stick around. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam A.K. Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Before we get started, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
All right, so so let's go into the next piece of info, which is Putin vows revenge on Ukraine after oil tanker was blown up. And talk about where that was and what happened there.
Well, yeah, this is kind of a big deal because we're dealing with an oil tanker that was in, of all places, the Mediterranean. So Ukraine struck out there, literally where that blue dot is. That's far away from Ukraine. This is like in the middle of the Mediterranean. So Ukraine struck a shadow fleet vessel crossing the Mediterranean Sea in an unprecedented attack that could curtail Russia's fundraising for war, as they say. The Ukrainian Security Services (SBU) claimed the drone strike on the sanctioned Kiadel oil tanker, which was some 2,000 kilometers outside of the Ukraine territory, was left critically damaged. Video showed a hexacopter drone smashing into the EU and UK sanctioned vessel off the coast of Libya. The first strike in the Mediterranean waters could discourage buyers of Russian oil carried on the aging ships that make up the Shadow Fleet. I don't think they're going to discourage anyone from buying this stuff, because that's the whole point. It's the black market, and there's all sorts of reasons why they're doing this. But look, an SBU source told the media that the new unprecedented special operation was absolutely legitimate, as tankers were used to circumvent sanctions and earn money that went to the war against Ukraine. So obviously, Putin is not happy with this one, as they say. So he's vowing revenge. So the Oman flag tanker left port, said, in Egypt on December 16th and turned back in that direction following the strike. The Shadow Fleet vessels, thought to number more than 1,000 now, they're saying, seek to hide their participation in Russia's war machine by obscuring their ownership and flying flags of other nations. Speaking at the annual year-end press conference in Moscow, Putin vowed to retaliate. He said, another of our tankers in the Mediterranean has been attacked, the Russian president said, but he claimed it would not have the desired effect of disrupting supplies, adding that in the end, it will only create an additional threat. A response from our country will follow.
So you have, of course, now oil by Russia. So now Ukraine has gone over after an oil tanker from Russia, and then you have an oil tanker being seized by the U.S., and then, of course, you have an embargo on Venezuela oil. It's all connected, Venezuela and Russia, and this entire thing. This is all connected to what has been going on. It's a world war with China involved. All of this that is happening right now is par for the course. We called this. We knew that this was going to happen. It's going to slowly add up to, oh my gosh, they're involved, and everybody is going to have some sort of event kicking off here. And this isn't to scare people. The people that are afraid of this news or afraid of this opinion, don't watch this kind of show. If this is something that stresses you out, if you don't like scary movies, don't watch scary movies. This is my opinion. This is what me and myself and many preppers, including Dex, have been preparing for. It is something we believe is not only a realistic thing, it is something that has been in the making for a very long time. The world and the different cultures and the societies in our world, they have different systems. You have communists and dictators, and of course democracies and so-called democracies. But again, all of these systems don't work together that well, right? So they end up fighting in a war. Dex, this is exactly what we said was going to happen, and it's crazy because it's over the oil too. We're supposed to all be solar and all electric in the future, but when it comes down to it, this oil is extremely important for the countries that are not right now.
It absolutely is. I mean, look, that's the biggest way Russia's getting around sanctions and generating revenue is from the oil. It's so important. If you take this picture of Putin, which is barely on the screen, and you move it up, and you can see it's been said that he was talking to Zelensky and he was saying, "I squish your head. I squish your head."
Oh, I'm not gonna be. I'm so dumb. I'm like, did he really? If you guys don't know, kids in the hall, I'm squishing your head. I'm squishing your head. Only some of you are gonna get it, and I'm super glad. Like, if everybody gets it, that means
photo though. It's a perfect.
Our demographics are older if everybody gets that, because
they should get it.
Younger kids just won't. By the way, great kids in the hall. That was a freaking great show. And then wasn't there Strangers with Candy? Wasn't that like similar? And then, yeah, In Living Color. Gosh, great shows. And then Putin vows revenge on the Ukraine. We've covered that. And then, of course, Ukraine-Russia peace deal still faces major hurdles. Now, I almost didn't want to cover this tonight just because I'm so fed up with the peace deals and the BS peace deals. I don't believe that any of these are going to work. I told you this like 3 or 4 times ago that the peace deals are just BS. Even the peace deals with the Iran and Israel, they might currently not be launching missiles, but it's like they are working on it, right? They are working on doing True Promise 3. It's like with Russia and Ukraine, these peace deals are just complete crap. There's never ever going to be these two groups of people that both have interests in Ukraine, which is obviously, you know, what some of our politicians have said, up to $12 trillion in resources underneath their soil. They're never going to give up over this stuff. It all comes down to, they say it's about principle. They say it's about the people there. It's all about resources for the future. If Ukraine has not only valuable soil for farming in the future, which I highly doubt that's the reason why they're going after it, it could be in part, but they also have trillions of dollars worth of minerals and different things that they can get for batteries and for this electric future, because that's going to be the oil, the black oil of the future. So yeah, they're going at it and they're not going to stop. By the way, thank you so much. And I missed over on news, somebody dropped an OH and I didn't drop an IO. So just had to give you that. Let's do a quick roll call. We have Ilea in the house. Thank you for modding. I appreciate that. Rob Mills. We've got Mary Miles. We've got Nat Tate. Thank you. We've got Art in the house. Salty. D. Griffin. Tammy Driver. If you do want to represent, you can also put your regular screen name and drop, what state you represent or what country. What is going on? Let's see here. We've got John Doe, Angelo Perfelli. Stephen says, I am from OHIO. All right. And then we've got the Drops Homestead is not present. Drop, it's so crazy. I was just thinking about it the other day. You've been here forever. I mean, a lot of you guys have, but you've been here since we had drama. Kendall, Pat, Monk Searcher, thank you. Gunny, thank you so much. John Killingbeck. We've got Cody in the house from Colorado. We've got Utah. We've got Alabama in the house. We've got a lot of folks from the Midwest. We've got Kentucky. We've got California, April, Lori. And we've got Florida, Half Baked, and so many more. Sandpoint, Idaho. I've actually drove through there. John Doe, thank you. And then Oklahoma. I've also been there quite a few times too. Mark Roberts, nice to see you. Hey, it's awesome to see everybody. And then a couple from people from UK. We've got Aussies in the house. Some of my favorite people are in our chat are from Australia. And then Arizona, Minnesota, Texas, Branson, Oshkosh, and everybody else. Thank you guys. I appreciate everybody that's here. All right, now before we move on, make sure to go check out EMP Shield, especially right now. You guys all know what this does. It's a device that protects your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats against, of course, EMP blasts from an adversary. If something goes off in the middle of the country, it's going to allow your car to run. It's going to ground the signal in less than 500 trillionths of a second before it can fry your car. Now, as well, it will protect you against a solar event. So if we have a Carrington level event from the sun, this will also protect against that. You're running out of time. If you do want to get it, though, with our $50 off per device discount, you'll always get that. So, if you miss the sale, then you'll always get that no matter what. But you will miss the end of the year sale, which is essentially them redubbing their Black Friday sale. And that is one of the largest discounts they've ever. It is the largest. Last Black Friday was 20% plus our $50 off. So again, it is the largest discount that they have ever done. So make sure to get it, especially if you aren't, if you're like many of us in this economy where every penny matters, this is the time to get one. Go to marfuglenews.com/EMP and make sure to use the code MARF. All right. And then we have Zelensky calls for U.S. to respond to signals that Russia is preparing to make next year a year of war. Dex, do you want to talk about that? And I think that's kind of obvious, but
yeah, I mean, look, he's always going to parrot and trumpet the idea that Putin's out to create war. He needs money, he needs financing, he needs loans, he needs gifts, he needs anything he can so he can keep the war going for the war hawks of Europe. But Zelensky called for the U.S. and other allies to respond to the bellicose signals from Russia. He said, today, we again heard signals from Moscow that they are preparing to make the next year a year of war. These signals are not only for us. It is crucial that our partners see them, and not only see them, but also respond, especially partners in the United States who often say Russia wants to end the war. So over the past few weeks, the president's team has made tremendous progress with respect to ending the war in Russia and Ukraine, And the president stated he believes we're closer now than we've ever been. That's coming from the White House, but the first statement was coming from Zelensky. So look, very much it's like you got the White House on one hand saying we're negotiating, and you've got Rubio, as we just said, saying we're still negotiating. It's just a little harder than we think. Well, that's because you got Zelensky on the other hand saying, it's going to be the year of war, according to Putin. So look, this is not going to, war is not over anytime soon. The Christmas classic song not happening here. Get prepared. They're gonna keep this up, and they're gonna keep going.
All right. So, and yeah, as far as a signal that next year is a year of war, I mean, in my opinion, you guys know, I believe that the big war is going to start late of next year. And I'm not an expert on the weather for what China needs to take Taiwan, but I can tell you it doesn't take a smart person to realize that if by 2027 or late 2027, you're going to have systems in place with the U.S., at least the funds going towards these things, if they have systems that can counteract some of China's current advantages, because they have advantages. Currently, 80% of the war scenarios around Taiwan, we're losing. And there's reasons why we're pulling back from NATO. There's reasons why we have people around our country, National Guard. There's a reason we have all of these things going on. And that is because they are trying to be in that 20% percentile where they're trying to win, right? And that means that we're screwing over allies in the midst of it. So yeah, next year, as far as the weather goes, I don't know what the season, I believe it will be fall or winter, but that's when I believe this will happen. And people go, oh, don't set a date. I'm not. I'm telling you what I've believed for years. I've said it, and now more and more sources and more Pentagon are saying that that's when they believe it too. And it's simple. It's because we will have the ability to counteract about 3 or 4 of the big vulnerabilities that China has an advantage on right now. If that's the case, China's going to strike before that, not after. They're not going to wait until we have a system to essentially counteract all of their advantages. It's simple to me, but again, we will see. I hope that we don't have a world war, but again, world war might not look what we think it will look like. It's not going to be a nuclear war. It's going to be protracted and big and drafts and all sorts of crap. It's not going to be fun. But it's also not something you have to be scared about and bite your nails all day, every day. This is something that we as preppers are prepping for. That's, it's why this is news from a prepper standpoint. Putin tells news conference that Kremlin's military goals will be achieved in Ukraine. Well, kind of... Again, par for the course again here too. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Friday that Moscow's troops were advancing across the battlefield in Ukraine, voicing confidence that the Kremlin's military goals would be achieved. Speaking at his highly orchestrated year-end news conference, Putin declared that Russian forces have fully seized strategic initiative and would make more gains by year-end. Russia's larger, better-equipped army has made slow but steady progress in Ukraine in recent months. Now, remember, they've done this without using a lot of their high-tech stuff. The first year, I think it was a year and a half before they ever even sent a jet into Ukraine. And think about the force that Ukraine had. Think about the equipment that they had. They had to basically, call up everybody like, hey, Jeff, do you have a sprinkler? I'm trying to water my lawn. Hey, Steve, do you have a rake? I need to rake my yard. They were calling up everybody. All of that equipment, that's nothing compared to what Russia has. Russia's only big strength is their military. Their GDP is not the big thing there. Their GDP is less than New York, right? But they spend half of their $2 trillion or whatever the GDP on military. So they focus heavily on that and their nukes. It's nukes and military power is why Russia's even a superpower in the first place. So this is what's really freaky, though, is the fact that they used all of the draftees, the people from prison, the old guns in the beginning. When I saw that, I knew they're saving their real military for a push later down the road, or for a massive event that's coordinated. In my opinion, it's going to be Russia does a massive, massive push on Ukraine and possibly even NATO. Not because they want to take NATO, because they're working together with China, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, South Korea, because they are trying to weaken the U.S. and topple us. Once the U.S. is out of the way, they will bring in BRICS. BRICS will be, they will also bring in new systems and new currencies if they win, right? History will change. Our world will change if they win. And right now, because people hate or love the president, what I say next, people will go, oh, no, he's not. I don't care if people think I'm stupid. I think that the president is probably part of one of two, evil rich people groups, but I do believe he cares about his legacy, and I think that they have intelligence that they can't put out because the media is half bought by different countries that they're talking about. I think that they are doing this as a defensive measure. I think National Guard was a defensive measure, not against drugs in our street, but against invaders. And I think that they were actually going after, they're doing this ICE thing because they actually have non-uniformed soldiers in our country, and they've all basically gotten funneled through to our states that have sanctuary. So that's why I think that all of this is happening right now. And I think that the president is protecting it. And a lot of people, that hate the president, if I say anything, if the president says it, they hate it. But I will tell you, I think that is what is going on. And I've talked to a lot of military members in the group, and many of them believe it too. So again, ask your friends and family what they think. I think that it's quite obvious when you put it all together. And then Sweatin' Ministries, thank you. And again, another old school Fugel fam. They are also with Mexico and Cuba. So I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Now people are putting up these perspective, videos of what happens if Mexico and all of these countries basically join in on a war with the U.S. and they invade through Mexico. Well, again, there was evidence that they were building tank-wide columns in the middle of the Darien Gap. The Darien Gap being this area down in South America that connects Colombia to the piece of land up above. So if you see this right here, Panama, the Darien Gap is right here. They're building a multi-million-dollar tank-wide bridge in the middle of a freaking jungle with tribes. So what do you think that's for? Why do you think that there's all these leaders getting taken out in Mexico? Why do you think that there's protests, again, protests that were not only started on TikTok, but there were coordinated thousands of videos coming out, duets, teaching people like what to do in this protest, how to deal with pepper spray and gas and all of that. All of these things dropped like 2 or 3 days right before this Gen Z protest against the Mexican president. There's something massive going on here. And I think that if you look really carefully, you'll see it's just going to keep happening. All the Sarah Adams stuff, everything that's happening right now, it's all coordinated, in my opinion. And then Dex. Here, I'm going to go to this right here. And then Dex, let's see here. Let's talk about it. Yeah, and basically Putin is saying that they're going to take much more land. I think that they could push and really use their all-out military, and they could crush Ukraine. The average age of the Ukrainian soldier was like up at 45 like last year. Do you remember that, Dex? All the young people were taken out. So they just keep recycling. Where are they even getting the soldiers for Ukraine when a year and a half ago, they were down so little?
The numbers are decimated. I mean, it's I don't know where they keep coming up with some. I guess they haven't fully resorted to the rest of the population of Ukraine. But it's going to keep going. But look, that whole idea of Mexico joining in and attacking the U.S., it's not far-fetched. And when you think about it, there's been a long-standing position where Mexico still feels it has rights to California, which would make a lot of sense for China to support a Mexican invasion into the U.S. to take California, because it helps grab that west coast. I don't think California would fall that easily. There's way too much military there, but I don't see, it's not unfathomable when you think about proxy wars. You think about somebody like China funding, creating weapons and driving militarization and gear into Mexico. And then you also, it's not just the Mexican government, but think about the fact that all of the cartels, which have now all of a sudden lost a big chunk of their revenue stream, and they're all militarized. This is not your cartels from the old days where they ran around in pickup trucks, with a big gun on the top. They're running around in full on military gear, full on military soldiers. So you basically have these cartels trained up like military. And to whatever extent that has been infiltrated into the Mexican government and maybe even to the Mexican military itself, could that be used by an adversary to cause harm to the US? And could it be used to encourage them to take back, California, which I know a lot of the sentiment there is that land was originally Mexico because the US took it from Mexico. So anyway.
So I actually have something from a Fugel family member that this was about 2.5 years ago. A Fugel family member that used to train the local forces in Afghanistan, either Afghanistan or Iraq. I think he was stationed at both at one point. He spent 11 years in the military, and he was in Iraq and he was in Afghanistan, and he trained local forces. So he was the trainer for the U.S. forces. Like he trained them how to shoot, do all these things. He said he was approached in Honduras, and he was approached by a certain Asian country. Or by a person from that country offering him a huge sum of money. But he was, of course, going back to the U.S. He was there, I think, living for 8 or 9 months because of some project and some private security thing he was doing. And he said that they were trying to offer him giant chunks of money, and he thought it was a joke. But it turns out, like, he literally thought it was a joke and turned it down. He said he might have even thought about it if he realized, like, if it was just a thing for a military, if they wanted to do it. But then if it wasn't China. But then he said he thought it was so absurd, he thought it was a joke. But then they kept contacting him, and they were for real about it. We heard about this too, Dex. Didn't we hear about the fact that China, because they were building these carriers, but they didn't have enough pilots, that they were basically accosting U.S. pilots and offering them absurd amounts of money to basically fly for China? And train.
Yeah, it was such a big deal. The military was trying to discourage former military pilots, obviously, because active wouldn't be doing this, but from doing this, from getting paid by China to train their fighter pilots for their aircraft carriers.
Yeah, it's a big deal because you can have 20 aircraft carriers, but if you don't have enough pilots to fly the planes that fly off them, then you've got problems. And apparently they had some issue. And they have 1.3 billion people. How do they have an issue with that? I don't know. And then Sweatna Ministries, thank you again. Let's see here. Somebody says, was he the pilot? No, the guy this was a Fugel family member that was, I forget what his actual position was. I feel like he was special forces of some type. And then Drops Homestead, J-Pass, Laura Griffith. I mean, he sounded legit. As far as I know, there was no way I could verify half of the stuff he said, but I felt like it was par for the course, and it didn't sound too absurd. He was offered, when I say absurd amounts of money, I'm talking about like $50,000 for like a month, for the first month, and then he said he would get paid like $2,000 or something per week or something after that. So he would get like a huge sign-on bonus, and then get this, and he literally thought it was a joke. Apparently it wasn't. And that makes sense because they want their soldiers, China or other countries, they want their soldiers trained up like U.S. soldiers. They want their trainers because if you're going to fight a force, you want your force to be trained in their ways. It's kind of like stealing a coach from a team, and then having their, tricks in your bag. Thank you so much, Sweatna Ministries, Dimitri Duduman, American Prophecy. Y'all look it up. I have, and that is very, 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 very interesting video for those of you that have not seen it. And then U.S. official defends Trump's nuclear test comments by citing mounting risks from other states. Now, if you remember, Trump said we are going to start doing nuclear testing again. And we're not talking about testing an empty missile or a missile without a warhead on it. They've done Tridents all the time. They launched Tridents out in California and other places. But they have not, supposedly, tested a live nuke and blown it up. Well, he says, in that statement that he made a month ago or a month or two, he said that the other guys are doing it, that Russia and China are testing nukes, and they're being quiet about it or something like that. Dex, I'm paraphrasing, but he also said, if they're doing it, we need to be doing it. Well, now another official is backing this up. Dex, do you want to talk about what this official is saying? And basically now they're saying they're live testing nukes.
Yeah, a U.S. government representative defended that stance that Trump took at the Global Nuclear Arms Control meeting and pointed to nuclear provocations from Russia, China, and North Korea. The U.S. Charge d'Affaires and the international organization in Vienna, Howard Solomon, made the previously unpublished comments, which were obtained by the media there at the Preparatory Commission of the Vienna-based Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization. And this happened back on November 10th. So this is just now coming out. As, quote, as President Trump indicated, the United States will begin testing activities on an equal basis with other nuclear armed states. This process will begin immediately and proceed in a manner fully consistent with our commitment to transparency and national security, Solomon said. Solomon provided further explanation by noting, for any who question this decision, context is important. Since 2019, including in this forum, the United States has raised concerns that Russia and China have not adhered to the zero-yield nuclear test moratorium. He said, adding that the concerns remain valid. So in other words, if they're not going to stop doing it, then we're going to start doing it, more so that we can have the same test data. But also hopefully that puts pressure on the international community to shut them down and get them to stop doing actual nuclear yield testing.
And Dex, just in case the link is wrong for the website, both 7 and 8 are the alien story. So I didn't have that one. So okay, anybody can go to you guys can go to the website if you want to read the rest of it. It's an interesting article, to say the least. Speaking of interesting articles, there's also this piece, which is Americans are increasingly convinced that aliens have visited Earth. Now, this is not a surprise considering there's constant talk about disclosure, especially right now since Steven Spielberg is coming out with this big movie, Disclosure. Is it Disclosure Day? Whatever it's called. It's Disclosure something. And if you haven't seen the preview for this, go watch it. It's up on YouTube. It got a lot of buzz. One of the weird things I heard about this, Dex, I don't know if you heard this, and I'm trying to think of the sound wave, Sino waves or something, but essentially in the preview, and I'll actually pull up a picture of like the lady, the reporter. You might have seen it already. Disclosure trailer. So, yeah, hold on. I'm going to mute so I don't accidentally pull this up here. Okay, man, this is creepy. So I'm excited for this movie, but there's so many theories around this this movie saying that, like, is he actually going to disclose things? Dex, I think you were the one who brought that up. Like, you saw that people were talking about this like they were actually going to be, putting real stuff in this movie. But she does this clicking, like click, 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 click. And people think it's either genius sound design or it is something that's even creepier, like this. There's Sino waves that they're doing, and I forget what they call it. If anybody in chat knows what I'm talking about, there's a lot of people talking about the actual sound of the clicking. It's a certain frequency. So a lot of people are creeped out by this. If you see it, just the clicking is creepy. She's basically doing the weather, and then all of a sudden she kind of blanks out. It almost appears like she's about to have a seizure, and then she starts clicking. Well, now people are just buzzing. I mean, the last 4 years we've had Congress, we've had all these people talking about UFOs. In my opinion, I do believe in UFOs. I've seen UFOs. I've seen things that just cannot be explained. Things going joop joo. Nothing a plane could do. But what's happening right now, I think it's a lot of it is manufactured, that this is all one big distraction for them to, keep us busy, keep us happy, keep us entertained. And it's something that they can just constantly put out. And when you put Congress or this or that on it, it's like people go, oh my gosh, Congress is talking about it. But they've still not disclosed anything. It's like the Epstein files. And like, strange day to talk about this since stuff is actually coming out today. But it's like we just got nothing and nothing. And they go, oh, we're going to disclose this. And then when they do, it's all redacted and it's crap. But yeah, go watch this, the movie trailer. You'll see exactly what I mean. She goes into it, and it is just creepy. Maybe I can play like a second here. Hold on. Yeah, I'm not even gonna play more. It's a movie clip. So, again, go check it out. It's like, it's freaking weird. But if anybody can name the type of waves that is, it is creepy. Somebody said echo communication. No, it's like something really crazy. Like they went into the science of the sound they did, and they were like, how did they actually do this? The fact that they did it for a movie instead of just having her go, they actually made it like some sort of crazy wave, which makes sense. It's Spielberg. All right, and then let's go into the next piece here. And people think it can, more convincingly that aliens have visited Earth. Look at what is in social media. Look at what it's around. Dex, I mean, have we not been bombarded with just nonstop alien stuff? And of course, Atlas is also something that's just really, really big right now. They're saying that they even think Oumuamua might have dropped off an alien, left, and then went back home and got the mothership, and it's coming back towards us or whatever. What did you think when you read that?
Audio up again.
Yes, you're good.
Oh, okay, good. I was trying to jump in there earlier. Look, I know you had the volume down for the video. Look, the Spielberg, obviously, most people know this, but he did E.T. and he did Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And when he did that, he actually had guides from the U.S. government that worked on the UFO recoveries, giving him insight as to what he should be doing to produce the movie. So a lot of people suspect he's being used, or his because he's got these connections, that they're leveraging him for this overall disclosure. And I think it goes back to looking at this. 47% of Americans believe it. That number was a lot lower ages ago. It could have been 37 and even 17%, as they say, back in 2012. So these numbers are getting higher and higher, and that is sort of the whole point, is to get the population so that it is not such a shock value if they were to actually disclose that there is this notion of aliens. The other thing they suggested is that he's actually going to have aliens in the movie, and he's actually going to have alien technology in the movie. Of course, this is all rumor and conjecture, but the theory is that, he's had such a connection to the U.S. government and to the alien or the UFO portions and secret portions of our government that have worked with him in his past movies, including Reagan, who stood up at the screening of E.T. and said, I know a lot of you in this room know that everything you just saw is true. And he said it with a straight face, and everybody sort of, chuckled it off as Reagan was making a joke, but he was really being serious, and left it at that. And he did that in front of Spielberg, in front of a private screening at the White House. So anyway, that's why I think what they're, whether it's true or not, whether you think there's really aliens or not, whether you think there's, going to be some big, reveal of a fake event that is supposed to be aliens. Well, the real course is, how do you get the population to believe into it? And the numbers, as the statistic shows, has proven that it's grown, and things like this movie will take it even higher.
Stephen Mann, great comment, says, drip, 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 the ultimate effect. Sam is talking more and more about war, making it seem like everyday occurrence. That's the thing. 5-6 years ago, when we said that this war was coming, that's when we got a lot more of the fear mongering. Now people don't say that anymore. because it's actually here. Like it's people are now seeing that it's all coming together. I didn't expect half of my predictions to be this eerily accurate. I thought I was just, looking at kind of things that were kind of common sense and looking at how over months, it would come out that this is actually what was true. And when you look at the patterns of what they report as truth, and then 6 months later, you find out that it was actually, they come out and say, well, this was the real truth, especially during 2019 when they said, this is the truth. And then in 3 months, it was different. They said, actually, it's not this and this and that. When you saw that, you started seeing a pattern of how they do cover things that are eventually going to change. And it's just crazy how many things our community were able to spot before it happened. I mean, going back to 2015, it was just wild. Like take, for example, that they were housing people in Walmarts, right? That was total theory until it wasn't, until they were like, oh, actually, they've got people in Walmarts. Like those kind of things were absolute theory. And the communities said, no, this is something that's true. And then boom, you find out that was where they were housing people. There was a lot of stuff going on that all of you guys ended up communicating with us. You guys, this is a viewer-powered channel. So many of you, I thank for getting me prepped up before I really, had a lot. It was like some of the military members letting me know that I'm on the right track. That was actually helpful, saying, hey, you do need to prep. This is coming. It definitely made me feel better, especially when everybody was saying all of this isn't happening and, oh, you've been saying this for years. Wars, especially world wars, take a long time. They take decades to build. And we're not talking about planning a wedding. We're talking about world domination. A wedding takes a year to plan. I can only imagine trying to topple the U.S. That's a big project. And it's a multi-country, multi-faceted operation that I believe is going on right now. This video here,
they could whip the whole world into one unification with an invasion, right? Just like you saw in the what was it? The Will Smith movie, Independence Day.
Yeah.
Like all the nations together now. Everybody's together fighting the big bad evil.
Yeah, and others where you've got China and the U.S. fighting side by side against the alien force. And by the way, Moonfall and a bunch of those other movies, I don't know if you guys caught this, but it was pretty obvious. I knew right away when I saw certain things in movies, I check who produced this movie, who invested in this movie. In Moonfall, guess who saves the day with their rocket after the U.S. loses their rocket? China volunteers their rocket for the U.S. to use on this mission to go to the satellite moon thing. There's actually quite a few movies that I've talked about this on where China ends up being like the last minute save the day with their space program, which they portray as like better than ours, right? And then you look at the investment companies and there'll be like, 900 million invested by this party, 20 billion invested by China. And of course, there's like pro-China sentiment all over the thing. So yeah. And then, by the way, this movie, a lot of people have been pointing out the eyes, again, that the eyes end up changing. Now, tell me what you think about that and the machine that they're hooked up to. I have no context. The trailer does not give you context of why they're wearing these things. But the two people are basically staring at each other and their eyes change. What do you guys think that is? Tell me your best guess. Obviously, the movie's not out yet. Hopkinson, what is going on? Says, I remember. Nice to see you. Let's see. It looks like the attachment on his head, like he is transporting his mind into something. Oh my gosh, you know what? What if he's putting his brain into the other guy, or like putting his personality into the other person, the younger person? Yeah, that's all we need, right? Is like a Soros, putting his brain into his son or something. Patrix, BooTube, nice to see you. It's just a movie. BootTube, I'm not saying it's anything more. I think it's going to be very interesting. In fact, that's the whole point. So if it is just a movie, it is programming around all of the things that are going on. Then they get everybody hyped up and then say alongside this movie, and this is one thing that countries have done, they will put out a fictional movie that puts something out, say like a Red Dawn film or whatever. Then they will put out articles or they'll put out news talking about a threat. Well, once people have seen it play out, even if it's in a fictional thing, especially a big Hollywood film, then they have it in their brain what this could look like, and they're more scared of it or they're more afraid of it, right? Whereas before, they couldn't imagine what it would look like happening. But after people saw the original Red Dawn, and even more so like the new one, all of those are propaganda. The reason why they have real military vehicles in them is because military let them use those vehicles because there's certain strings pulled in a lot of those movies. In Top Gun and all of these others, sometimes military lets movies use their stuff for propaganda or for recruiting purposes. So if a bunch of teenagers see Top Gun, they'll sign up and be a pilot. So they actually allow them to use that. But in the case of Red Dawn, both of them, there's a lot of different people out there that have said that, a lot of that propaganda is to basically put the fear in us from Russia and all of our red enemies. At the same point, now we need a version of Red Dawn that shows, a different country in charge. That's what I think. Because people do need to understand what it could look like. Dragon Day is actually a closer movie to what I think is going to happen, where the people are already here. There's already people on the payroll. All of a sudden, sheriffs of small towns are going to, gather in the city and say, here's your bans. You can't go out after 3 o'clock. Without the bans, you can't get food. The supply chain is shut down. We've shut down, all the roads. And there will be people that are already in place, people that are getting paid, and people that will essentially be the worker bees or whatever. Ukraine-Russia peace plan still faces major hurdles. I'm not going to go into this much. Again, we talked about this over on TV. Again, they basically are saying, all of the things for this peace plan are falling through. Russia is now spouting out that they're so confident they're taking massive ground and they're about to do this big push. Europe is not taking it sitting down. Europe is publicly, obviously, huge developments in all of the doorstep of NATO. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, they're all digging trenches, dragon's teeth, fencing, all of that. They're doing air defense systems, advanced air defense systems, and they're all saying we can't rely on the U.S., which is currently, our allies are pretty estranged right now. But they're all doing that, not like there's going to be a peace deal on the table, like there's going to be a war. And it's pretty clear that there's about to be a big push between NATO and Ukraine and Russia. But I think it's all par for the course. It's going to happen. All of these are going to happen at the same time. They meant to spread our military thin, and I think that the president took actions to stop it. So they're basically on their own for, Russia. Before we move on, make sure to go check out Harvest Right. Again, this is a machine that you can do your own freeze drying. This is an investment to make. It is a machine. Some folks look at the prices of freeze dryers in general and take a step back. This is a machine that can make you independent in many ways. This is a machine that once you have, you can actually save a lot of money, especially if you're trying to get 6 months to 12 months of food, which many of you are. If you have a family of 4, you will quickly realize if you want to get long-term storage food, not only are you going to spend a lot of money if you do 2 or 3 year shelf life foods, rotating them out constantly and trying to eat them all, but you will also spend a lot of money if you go freeze-dried. You'll spend a lot of time dehydrating. In this case, you can freeze dry all of your own stuff, your own dietary needs. You can, of course, preserve almost everything and anything. If you have food, again, that, don't put it in the freezer, preserve it, freeze dry it, and it will last up to 25 years. You can do all of this yourself. You will actually save money. If you're outfitting a family of 4, you will quickly end up making your investment back. So go over to marfooglenews.com/freeze. It is one of the best made freeze dryers on the market. It's super easy. It is like it's essentially a set it and forget it depending on what foods you're doing. So go to marfooglenews.com/freeze. It is the best way to preserve food, even better than dehydrating, longer shelf life, more flavor. And all you need to do is add water or cook in sauce, and boom, you bring all the life back. And then U.S. launches vengeance attack on ISIS targets after National Guard soldiers were taken out. Does anybody else see the timing of this as, a bit kind of out of nowhere? I understand that the National Guard was not that long ago. But when we're talking about the Sarah Adams, predictions here, look at the timing. You've got Australia with a father and son duo. You have, of course, in Taipei today, in Taiwan, in the capital, a dude dropping smoke bombs and pulling out a foot-long machete type thing and taking 4 lives, or at least 3 lives. You've got all of these kind of events happening as Sarah Adams has basically predicted that the Middle East, and most likely, being ordered by somebody else, I don't think it's all ISIS, is planning they're in the operational phase of a massive planned attack against the U.S. Now, I'm not saying this, Sarah Adams is saying this, but there are a lot of things I agree with Sarah Adams on, and I think we've all seen many of the kind of placeholders set for Sarah Adams' theories to be true, where 1,000 people are kind of sleeper cells in the United States, 1,000 people in Europe. One thing I think she missed is I think it's bigger than that. I think it's all U.S. allies. It's Australia, it's Taiwan, it's anybody that's allied with us. Here's my prediction. We're going to see some horrid events in Japan. We're going to see some horrid events in some European, NATO, and we're going to see it in the next month. And we're talking about lone wolf attacks or these things that cause massive panic. I say this because of what's going on here. Now, U.S. launched strikes. This is kind of crazy. What does that tell you that they're thinking about right now? This is a week or 2 weeks after the National Guards got taken out. In this time where they're saying that this group is now operational, and now they've actually quoted. They said the U.S. conducted military strikes against Islamic State in Syria on Friday, following on a promise President Donald to avenge the deaths of the 2 Iowa National Guard soldiers taken out in a terrorist attack in the country last week. American military forces employed more than 100 precision munitions to strike more than 70 targets of suspected ISIS sites at several locations across the ancient city of Palmyra in central Syria as part of Operation Hawkeye Storm. And I think it's interesting that they called it Hawkeye. If you're watching out, if you're vigilant, you have a Hawkeye. And we've all have a Hawkeye here. We've been watching this. We knew this was happening before Sarah Adams came out even, because of all the people coming into our country and the video. In fact, we know because of Muckraker. I'll give credit to where it's due. Muckraker showed us that there were 25 to 40, 18 to 25-year-old men with buzz cut hair, fatigues, coming into our country alongside the people that were, families trying to get a better life. That told us, hey, there's units coming in. And then the people that were caught, they were then released to a court date and then never background checked. I still to this day don't understand it. It's like making antibiotics in China and having them control all of our supercritical antibiotics. It's just dumb. And this is a quote. Earlier today, U.S. forces commenced Operation Hawkeye Strike in Syria to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapons sites in direct response to the attack on U.S. forces that occurred in December. And they said that they were doing this because they said this is not the beginning of a war. This is a declaration of vengeance. This is pretty savage. And he said the United States of America under President will never hesitate and never relent to defend our people. The secretary noted that anyone targeting Americans anywhere in the world will spend the rest of their days watching over their shoulder and will be targeted for death. Dex, I mean, this was like not mincing words here. They basically said, we're gonna chop you.
Well, look, it's they went after Palmyra, that location in Syria, which is where our two soldiers lost their lives, as well as an Iraqi interpreter 7 days ago. And it's that same area they went into. But the thing that got me the most was Commander Admiral Brad Cooper stressing that this was to prevent any of these ISIS-inspired attacks on the U.S. homeland. But it also makes you wonder about the 2 U.S. National Guard that were hit by an Afghani. I know it's not Syria, in D.C. What was that, like 2.5, 3 weeks ago? And another that allegedly was arrested for threatening to take out buildings in Texas. So there's all of these little events that are happening. And then, of course, what went down in Australia, and you tie it all back to the open source intelligence that Sarah Adams had put together, saying that they were preparing to do these types of events across America. And it's not just across America, but it's like you said, it's anywhere that's an ally area. And the easiest targets for them are always the ones in the Middle East, because they don't have to travel far and security is a lot less. And it's easier for them to strike our soldiers. That's what, like a lot of times, even our government has said, we put our soldiers in harm's way in the Middle East to keep the fight there, as opposed to allowing it to come inside our country. Because if they're there, they can be targeted and not have them come target America. So it's all making sense that this is all coming together. And what you're seeing is this massive response, sort of to show, hey, we mean business, and we're gonna bring the hammer down hard if you guys are gonna continue to do anything like this. Will it stop them? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that they necessarily respond to the hammer. They respond to not being around anymore. People that have such a strong ideology to perform an act that is as brazen as the ones they perform, I don't think that they're going to get scared by an attack against their munitions or against their other soldiers. I think they're going to be more brave, more emboldened to continue their mission. So I think the ultimately what you're going to have to do is what we've done in the past, which is take out these bands of people and find them, especially those that are targeting America or our allies.
Yeah, and this is, we see the public angle of this, but we're not seeing what's going on in the background. It looks like what Sarah Adams was saying was true. And do I think it's just purely like Al-Qaeda and ISIS is, just all of a sudden revamped and they were always there and hiding, and now the family members of those slain are now older, they're coming back to get us, right? I think that this is artificially boosted by other countries, and they're paying. And there is a real hatred for us, these groups. They do hate us, but they also need money to do this kind of stuff. They need money to travel. They need entrances. And honestly, during the last 4 years, that's the scary part, is we had more people come in a short amount of time than we've ever had come in before. And the policy, of releasing them to their court date and then doing a background check later, that happened. Why? There were weird things that told us, hey, we need to be on guard here. The media, and that includes the media going after anybody saying, oh, that there could be bad people. Because they're saying, oh, don't say that they're bad people. They're not bad people. They're just trying to get a good life. Any idiot knows that if you have what happened to our country over the last 4 years, where these huge convoys are coming in, our enemies are going to take advantage of that. That's the truth. Why? If I've got 40 soldiers, why would I not send them in with this convoy, especially if there's basically no negative that comes from it? If they get caught, they still get released in many cases. Or if they get caught, they get sent back. If they get through, they can go to a state where nobody can question where they're from, and they can set up shop, and they can set up things all over the place. And I don't know. The fact that all of the land lines up like, the old school projectors where you would put like a tracing image on the clear frickin' projector, and it would show on the wall. It's like you could line up a map of America and the bases, and then take a line of all of the property bought by a certain country, and it lines up right across the street from all of our bases. And these are farms and big properties right next to it. It's like you could literally have your soldiers get in, set up shop, and then go to those places and start training. They could gather supplies. And then you have events like what we saw in New York. They found this huge, crazy operation where they had all of these SIM cards and things that were going to overwhelm the New York cell towers and things like this. After Spain, all of Spain went down. The power went down in Spain. The grid had this huge issue. Within one day, they said this BS excuse, and then they said, oh, it's tied to our renewable energy. Guess who's making all the renewable energy? Well, then the day after that, within 2 days, all of a sudden, it's like Spain does this. I think what happened is Spain told the U.S., hey, we actually opened up this transformer that was the cause of it, or this converter, and we found this radio. What happens 2 days later? The U.S. opens up one of their big renewable, huge building-sized things, and they found radios inside the middle of them to supersede or to get past the actual firewalls put in these things. We're talking about a power grid that, if you hit a few targets if you could knock it down with a cyber attack for, who knows, about 72 hours, a week, a month. But you could have physical people here that will then finish the job, physically attack. I mean, they only need to hit 9 transformers to knock down our entire grid. But say they knock out all of them. They have people all over the country. They do a coordinated attack on our grid. Then all of a sudden our grid's down for 2 years. And that's no joke. We had that cell phone event that happened in New York. And it's like, you see these things that are going on. It's very, very obvious that something much, much bigger is going on here. And the response from the U.S. and the response from the government, because Donald's in charge, and half of the people hate him, including some of you. It's very easy to tear him apart and say, oh, he's the R word or this or that. But why would he bring all of this negative attention, like just tons, nonstop drama to his administration, unless there is something there that later he can go, I told you my legacy is that I saved America or something. He cares about his legacy. He's very, very, very proud of everything with his name on it, right? So I do think he is doing this because of information they have. And then you look at this, and it could be all a big op, and an op that will happen anyways. Imminent large-scale attack on the U.S. homeland. She has repeatedly warned of coordinated al-Qaeda-led plots involving hundreds of thousands of trained militants already inside the U.S. Potentially using, and this was one of the other ones, invisible bombs or undetectable explosives. And what she said is these things could get past the customs and stuff. Metal detectors. That's a scary thought. Sleeper cells, vehicle-borne devices, and multi-group cells, including ISIS, Al-Shabaab, and Taliban elements. She described them as comparable to the October 7 events, Israel, or the 2008 Mumbai's, claiming some were in motion as of late of 2024, early 2025. These warnings gained attention after events like the incidents in New Orleans and Las Vegas. No direct links were confirmed. She said right before the Australia thing, a couple days before, that they went into operational phase. All of a sudden it starts. I mean, it was like a Friday, and then it was like Thursday, and then it was Friday or Saturday that it happened or something.
Yep.
Dex, it's lining up, and that's terrifying.
Well, look, and to go back to the China connection, you can't draw this connection directly to ISIS, but you can certainly draw it to Hezbollah, Hamas, any of the other dozens of organizations that are, say, supported by Iran and even supported by Venezuela. And you watch the China money, okay? 90% of Iran's crude oil exports, even though it's sanctioned by the U.S., is purchased by China. In other words, China is flowing the money into Iran. We know what Iran does with that money. they take a large chunk of that and they use it to fund and build the terror organizations, whether it's, in Yemen, in Lebanon with Hezbollah, which also goes into Venezuela. Okay. And then now let's talk about Venezuela. China is the largest buyer of sanctioned Venezuelan oil. So again, all of that money. So even if they're not boots on the ground in these countries, handing them anything, they're giving them the most important thing, which is the money they need to do the harm to America, because they know that Iran and they know that Venezuela are A, working together, and B, are doing and wanting to do significant harm to America. So the more they can do to buy that oil from them, keep the gravy train flowing and keep that money flowing into those countries so they can perform these actions, it's absolutely tied back to China in that sense. Now, ISIS is a little different. China doesn't like them because of the connection with the Uyghurs. Even Russia doesn't like them because they've had their issues. So they get their money in different ways. But you go back to Sarah Adams saying that these organizations, whether it's ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and others, are all starting to work together. I don't think it really matters, because it's all the others that are getting the funding. And ISIS is rather small, to be honest, because they don't have a lot of money. It's mostly from extortion and maybe some stuff they might pull out of Africa. But when you put it all back together, it's clear that the biggest funding of this is coming indirectly, but by design, China.
Now, I said, would it be silly to say that Sarah Adams' claims may be connected to China? It goes over, and it actually talks a lot about it. It says, raising the possibility of Chinese complicity via Taliban ties isn't baseless or silly. It's a logical extension of known economic flows. And I said this years ago. And by the way, do you remember in 2021 that horrible pullout that we did, where we left $700 million worth of our gear to these guys, to the Taliban? Where we saw idiot Taliban flying our Black Hawk helicopters and Humvees, all sorts of stuff, rocket launchers. They loved it. It was embarrassing. It was horrible for us and our allies. Like, it made us look super weak. No matter if you loved the current president, whatever else, many of us believed that there were infiltrated in some of the highest of offices in that because of what happened. And it's so crazy. We pull out. It says China has deepened relations with the Taliban since their 2021 takeover, driven by interest in Afghan minerals, lithium, copper, example, Belt and Road and infrastructure, and preventing Uyghur militant groups. So, and then Adams, and I didn't know this. I did not see this about Adams. Adams and some summaries of her interviews allege that portion of Chinese mining funds, example, 30% of a $10 billion investment flows to the Taliban indirectly and to Al-Qaeda. So, and I do want to point out, I lost track there. That radio that was found in the middle of our, this thing that we got from China, we have a lot of their renewable technology. That would have possibly been able to turn it off remotely, even though it had firewalls and it went by this standard of being built. That is crazy. Solar Winds, that big attack that hit everything. It hit all Fortune 500 companies. It hit everything. If you go to a grocery store and type your number in, it hit those companies. It hit everywhere. Solar Winds, we talked about years ago. We said that they were setting up back doors in it. Now, that is literally what was said in the war games that the U.S. Played out, and that 80% of the scenarios, the U.S. was losing Taiwan to China. They even mentioned fake FEMA alerts that would go out all around our country and essentially panic everybody. Imagine a FEMA alert that says that this country's invading, and then a FEMA alert that says this country's invading. Eerily sounding a whole lot like Leave the World Behind, which, again, was consulted by and very, very involved with our former president, Barack, and his wife. Their production company made that movie with all the weird symbolism, the weird numbers, the weird everything about that movie is just weird. So it's so crazy to see this coming together. And I believe that what we are saying here, people say, oh, they're doing it for views. We're it's going down and down and down the more I share this theory. I'm telling you. And there's a reason why. Go look at the investors of some of the biggest platforms and look at the companies and the groups that also, go against anything that says anything about certain countries. And you have a lot of money flowing into those to basically quell this. So the best thing you guys can do for us is share us out. Because I think that a lot of people are going to eventually believe it, but it's going to be too late. All those people that said, oh, you're just scaring people, those people, I hope that the more that they saw, they go, wait, Marfoogle News was talking about that. I hope they see it and they go, holy crap, I should start getting prepped. Because I think it's really, really close now. And then Justice Department starts to post several 100,000 documents online with the entire Epstein files, right? So the files still that are going to be redacted, there's going to be a lot of stuff left out. People have to wait in line. When you go to the actual Justice Department, it's going to say you have to wait in line. You have 12 minutes in queue. And if you don't get in fact, earlier I didn't get in and then it just expired, then you just don't get to see them. But there's so many people going to it right now that there is a waiting list to look at all of this stuff. Now, we talked about this over on news. I would highly recommend you to go over to news to see more of our opinion. But Dex, quickly remind people what people are talking about as far as a weird picture with Mr. Clinton.
Oh yeah, the big picture going around right now is Clinton in a pool with Ghislaine and another woman, and everybody wants to know who the other woman is. They're not like skinny dipping, but they're probably. It looks like an indoor pool or it's a nighttime event. Doesn't look like it's bright and sunny, and they do appear to have bathing suits on. So that's the best I can describe.
There is a obviously a lot of folks that are digging through to see if they can find absolutely anything in a lot of these files. Governor Dill says Bill Clinton calling Hillary this evening to explain the Epstein photos. Yeah, I don't think she needs any explaining. I find that Bill and Hillary, I think they were the inspiration for House of Cards. I don't know. Do you guys get that drift? I don't know. I think that's them. And then before we move on, make sure to go check out Jace. This is another thing. Like I said, it's so crazy that U.S. has essentially still not making our own antibiotics. Right now, 97% of the APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients in antibiotics, are made in China. That's nuts. They are an adversary. They're literally our enemy. And they potentially are going to do an event where war games in almost every situation have them trying to sow chaos and shut down the U.S., even if it's for 48 to 72 hours to delay the U.S. responding to Taiwan so they can take it, so they can eventually be number one with the power, the newfound power they have from controlling that part of the ocean. So again, 90% of all antibiotics, 97% of the APIs made in China. Crazy. If you want a kit with all of the most commonly prescribed ones in a handy, travel bag that is shipped discreetly to your door, then go to marfooglenews.com/Jace. It's a great thing to have on hand, even for just regular use. But again, it is also good for disasters. If there's an earthquake, if there's something like Hurricane Katrina where you couldn't go to the hospital had to go to a hospital. So that's what we talk about. And especially if you're on the West Coast, we've been talking about all this week, the San Andreas, how they just said that there's a huge percentage chance that the big one is going to happen, in the next however many years. Either way, you have Cascadia subduction zone. You have massive earthquakes in California and along those lines. If something happens that's big enough, it would knock down all the freeways. You won't be able to get anywhere. So we highly recommend getting yourself some antibiotics. And again, they have all sorts of other bigger kits. They also have Jace Daily, where if you are dependent on a medication, whether you like to be or not, if the lights go off tomorrow, will your body go through any kind of withdrawals because you don't have certain kind of medications? Well, then look at Jace Daily. You can get a 12-month extended supply of your prescription meds all at once. Go check it out. See if your medication qualifies. Marfooglenews.com/Jace. And again, thank you guys for supporting us. It is not, it's crazy. If you want to tank a channel faster, start talking about our theory. I'm telling you. And I'm not going to stop. I think that it would not feel right to stop. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for coming. Dex, I appreciate your service so much today.
Much love. Great job, brother.
All right, you guys. We are going to be doing a shout and we're going to be thanking our top supporters tonight. Sweatin'em Ministries. Thank you. Sean Ryder. Happy Friday and happy holidays. Appreciate you all. Well, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to all. If you do not celebrate Merry Christmas, do understand many of us do here, and I will tell you this right now. Christmas is my favorite time of the year. I'm, after this, going to turn on some Christmas music in the house, and again, just to have it bumping for the next week. Thank you, Kimbria. Thanks for being you. That's awesome. Hey, thank you. Sweatin'em Ministries, More Alien Disclosed. Thank you again for saying that. Again, Patrix4213, thank you for joining as a member. Thank you to all of the members that have joined, and thank you for all of those who have joined and have been with us for like almost 3 years now. There's people going on their 3rd year of membership, so thank you. We can't say thank you enough to the people that support our channel. We appreciate it. My Annuity Store Inc. Now, there's a perfect plug. My Annuity Store Inc. Thank you so much for your support. All right, you guys, have a wonderful night. Kimbria, thank you so much again. Sean Ryder, you guys have a good one. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout-out. It's a shoutro. Remember, all of the links are over on marfooglenews.com. You can, of course, go there and find all of the friends. You also have a full bibliography of every single article, tweet, video, picture, document there. Make sure to go check all of our awesome mods out. They are always in the chat doing awesome jobs, especially Ilea. Just go to Ilea's channel and tell her something awesome about her. All right. You guys have a great night. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out.